Thank you for, sorry, Thank you for joining us today's webinar hosted by the Organization Development and Change Workforce Education and Development Program at Penn State. This is a monthly webinar series presented during our lunch hour. My name is Masha Ruimal. I'm a PhD student in the Workforce Education and Development Program at Penn State. I will moderate today's webinar along with my colleagues Asa Al-Hachri, who is also a Penn State student in the same program, and Jose Sandoval, who is a PhD candidate in the Learning Design and Technology program at Penn State. Due to this webinar's interactive format, please use the Zoom chat feature if you have any questions about the presentation. The chat button is on the bottom of the screen. The Q&A session will be at the end of the presentation. However, if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to write them down in the chat box. For your reference, our online Master of Professional Studies in Organization Development and Change is designed for professionals who need the skills and knowledge to lead change effectively in their programs or organizations. Furthermore, there is a master's and PhD program in the workforce education and development with a concentration in human resource development and organization development. Our program has created a continuously monthly free webinar series with experts worldwide. Today, we are presenting Making Training Deliberate and Impactful by Dr. Mark Johnson. Dr. Johnson is a distinguished educator with over 3 decades of experience in championing student success. Dr. Johnson holds an impressive academic background and has served in leadership roles in career and technical education at both national and local levels. Renowned for his expertise, he has received numerous awards and accolades, including being named National Career and Technical Educator of the Year. Dr. Johnson's impact extends beyond academia, as he has also contributed significantly to workforce development in entertainment industry. Isn't that awesome? We are honored to have Dr. Johnson joining us today. For more information about Dr. Johnson's bio, please visit today's webinars page on Eventbrite. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our speaker today. Dr. Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marcia. I appreciate it, and thank you all for attending and being with us here today. So I want to give you a heads up as we do this presentation. I am not your typical presenter. I am not going to revisit what everybody has believed to be the norm or the expectation in education. My purpose, my mission is to greatly improve and enhance the way we prepare America's workforce. Reality is that as you look across the country, everybody does training. But quite frankly, most really don't get it. They do what they've always done and think that's the way it's supposed to be. No. Our mission in workforce development is to improve and greatly enhance the performance of every employee in every company, every organization that there is. That's what our job is to prepare those that put people to work and do it with great impact. And so that's what my presentation is about today. So let's jump into it. I have 6 basic concepts that I'm going to cover during this presentation. The first concept that I want you to consider is the idea of connecting with the learner. My 40 years, near 40 years in education, that's the one thing that I have learned to focus on more than anything is connecting with the learner. I have a fervent belief that education begins with trust. Think about it. I've got students coming into my classroom. They'll spend up to 3 hours with me in a lecture. Or I'll have apprenticeship trainers from around the country come and sit in a 40-hour-long workshop throughout the week. And the question is, why would they stick around if they didn't trust me? What they could get up and walk out at any time. What's going to keep them in a room? What's going to keep them engaged with me? And the thing that I have found is the ability to immediately connect with them and to know who they are and to know how they learn, know what their expectations are for me, what their expectations in the class. And I work very hard to connect with a learner. Some of you may have heard of me. I'm known as the memory guy. I'm the guy that the first day of class, I know every student by name. And I do it with dozens, hundreds of people at one time. Most I've ever done is about 350 people at one time. I'm not gifted. I'm practiced because I do it all the time. I do it in every class. And every student I've ever had will tell you I'm the one guy, the one teacher they using the first day of class. And that connected them to me because not everybody does that, but I do. And they come to expect that. And that's one of those trust relationships that we begin to do. So let me give you a little few tips and secrets on how you can be that person that constantly and immediately engages with the audience. So here's just a few ideas. So the first thing I have my students do, whether it's a workshop or whether it's a class, I have them all get up and introduce themselves. But it's not just their name. I have them tell me 4 or 5 things about themselves, who they are, where they're from, what group or agency they're with, what the reason they are for being in that class or workshop, and then some fun facts about them. And so what they're doing is helping paint a picture. They're giving me more of a story than just this person standing in front of me, so that throughout the class, I can come back around and I connect with the person, whether they're a chef or a musician, a drummer, whatever they might do for fun, I can come back and reconnect with that and make that part of the learning experiences. They feel engaged with me because not only am I presenting information, but we're having a conversation because I know a little bit about them. So first thing you do is have them introduce themselves. The next thing I do is I take a picture. Now, for me, it's a mental picture. I take it in my head. That's how I'm able to remember 50 to 100 people, is because I can take that picture in my head and close my eyes and I can see everybody in the room. To help me out, since I'm 63 and getting a little older, I go in the night before and I look at all the table tents and all the table, and I will memorize all those in order in my head, so I know them by name around the room before they even introduce themselves. So it gives me a little bit of head start. Now, the funny thing is that I call this technique take a picture. Well, I've had people that have taken me literally. I've got a friend that's a geography professor here at Pitt State. And what he does is the first day of class, he takes an actual camera or takes his phone and he takes a photo of everybody in the room. And then what he does is he puts that picture into Adobe Photoshop or PowerPoint, and then he puts a white box underneath everybody's face and prints that out and writes the name of that person as they introduce themselves that first day under their picture. So when he goes back into class, instead of having just a written list of names, it's hard to associate with the face, he's got the face to go with the picture. And think about this. I just want to ask you a question you think about. How many of you have ever said, I know that face, I just can't remember the name? Well, think about it. The reason you can't remember the name is you didn't see it. You saw the face, but you didn't see the name. And we remember what we see, not what we hear, as I'm going to prove here a little bit later on in my presentation. So the key is what he's done is he can see the face now in the picture, and he can see the name with it. Another thing that's extremely helpful for me is the table teams. I use these all the time in my classes. Put them in. So guess what? When I look out at the class and I see the student, right there in front of their face is their name. So when I close my eyes and look at the room, there's those students with their names right in front of them. And so it helps me remember them and remember their names a lot easier. You can also use name tags, but quite frankly, this is only for small groups of about 4 or 5, because I can't see from the back end of the room a little bitty name tag. Rather, that table tent that's big and large in front of them, I can see from 50 feet away, and it makes it very convenient for me. But name tags are good in small groups. It makes it very personable, and it's right there. But the key is, whatever method you use, the way to remember their names is to call on them constantly throughout the class. If my students will tell you that when I do a workshop, I will probably call on everybody's name at least a dozen times throughout the day, because I'm constantly checking for understanding, constantly engaging with them, constantly having conversations. And so by calling on them, that's just reinforcing their name, putting it there for me, so I keep track of it all the time. But again, trust is a critical issue. It's important that your students trust you, feel that you respect them, and feel that you have their back so that they'll listen to you. But if I haven't established that trust, really, why would they sit there and listen to me in a classroom or in a workshop or webinar? The second concept that I want to address is Thorndike's law of effect. This has been around for a while, but it's one of the key concepts that we talk about in this in learning. When you stop and think about Kirkpatrick's model of evaluation, it's one of the standards across the industry. The very first level is reaction. Now, it doesn't measure my effectiveness as a teacher, but it does identify a key point as we consider evaluating our training methods, and that is it enjoyable? Because think about it. If we have an organization and every time somebody says, got to go to training, and everybody groans like, oh, why? You have a problem. Because if people don't want to learn and don't want to attend training because it's as boring as all get out, maybe we need to rethink the way we present the information. Instead, we want people to say, oh, we're going to have a training session day. Sign me up. I want to go. That should be what the anticipatory set is for going to a training session. If they're not looking forward to it, you're starting in a hole already. Instead, set the expectations high so that it's a pleasurable experience. And so I have students that sit in my workshops for 40 hours all week long, and they'll comment, you know, we spent 8 hours a day with you every day, and it didn't feel like it lasted that long because it's enjoyable, it's fun, it's engaging, and I do things that keep them involved throughout the week. So we make it a pleasurable experience. But I will tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, one of the big factors is the way we present information. Here's a fact. 83%, studies have varied between 80 to 84% over the years, but it's a fact that 83% of the information that our students retain is from what they see, not what they hear. Matter of fact, my friends in communication tell me that factually that 88% of communication is not verbal, it's nonverbal. So most of the messages that my students are learning are not from what they hear from me, it's from what they see from me, my modeling of the behavior. That's far more important than the things that I say. And so guess what? PowerPoint. I have trainers from all over tell me, man, it is boring as all get out. People create these PowerPoints, they got a list of bullets on there, and they just stand there and read from the screen. I have a question for you. Nobody, and I mean nobody, likes to be read to from a bullet list on a PowerPoint. Yet, nobody likes it, and they turn around and they do it to other people. Why? The golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So why would you create an experience that is boring and dry? I've come up with a mantra. Bullets are for guns, not PowerPoint. They kill, and they kill presentations. Stop using bullet points. It should be a visual media, not a word list. One thing that most people don't think about is that PowerPoint was never created for the presenter. It was created for the audience. Because think about it, you're standing in front of the room, are you going to turn around and face the screen and read from it and show your backside to the audience? You're supposed to be talking to the audience. And besides, you're the subject matter expert. Don't you know what you're talking about? Why do you need notes on the screen? The only reason you need notes is because you haven't practiced. We have to rethink the way we present information. It's not for us, it's for our audience. So here's some tips. Number one, whatever you put on the screen, keep it simple. I'm not against words. I'm against a lot of words. So just keep it simple, because if you put a whole list of information on screen, this is what makes me think. It's cluttered. It's a cluttered mess. I don't know where to start, where to focus. It takes me a while to dig through all the stuff to figure out what you're trying to tell me. If you're going to put it on the screen, make sure it's big enough for everybody to see. I have friends of mine in the College of Business that love to put up Excel sheets up on the screen. 30 rows and 23 columns, and look at A23. Are you kidding me? I can't see that. The only time you get to put an Excel spreadsheet up is when you put it, give me a handout so that's highlighted so I can see the exact information that you're showing me on the screen. Otherwise, you're just confusing me and really making me bewildered. I kind of kid. Don't put everything on a screen. It can get ugly in a hurry. Keep it simple. Again, bullets are for guns, not for PowerPoint. Now, I got to ask you a question. How many of you have ever heard the phrase, the rule of six? educational institutions across the country teach this, and they need to stop because there's no such thing. The rule of six was created way back when I was teaching in the 1980s, before we had PowerPoint and we used transparencies. So those sheets cost 50 cents each. Well, you could buy a box of 100 for 50 bucks. Well, a professor like me can go through a lot of those in a hurry. So it cost a lot of money. So guess what people did? They started putting everything onto one slide. And then it got to the point where they would review it and bring the sheet down one point at a time. It wasn't a good method. It just was better than looking at all the stuff at one time. And somebody said, you know, if you're going to do that, keep it to 6 lines and 6 words per line. It wasn't an effective rule. It was a threshold of pain. Nobody wants to see that much. So the rule of 6 does not work as a standard. It works as a threshold of pain. Don't go near there. The only rule is keep it simple. Another thing for you to think about or consider is that it should be like a billboard. Drive down the highway. When you're driving down the highway, how long does it take you to understand the sign? About 2 to 3 seconds. The same thing should be true with the PowerPoint slide. You look at the slide, you see the idea, and then you listen to me talk about it and understand it more fully. But if I put the story for you to read on it, you're going to have to park your car. And that's not the purpose of a billboard, to be a drive-in theater on the highway. It's just to show an idea so you get it quick as you're moving down the highway. Don't make your PowerPoint screen a prompter. That's not the purpose of it. And if you know anything about technology, you know that your notes page shows up on your laptop in the corner in the presenter view, but it doesn't show up on the screen for the audience because it's not for the audience. It's for you. You don't need that. Keep the screen simple for your audience. So I'm going to show you some before and after, and I'm anxious to hear what you think about this, and maybe you might post these in some of the chat ideas. I'm going to give you a before and after, and then you kind of let me know what you think. Do you like it? Let me know. So here we go. The first one, this is a rule of 6 slide. It is a basic slide. It's 36-point font, 24-point font headers, and it's got no more than 6 lines and no more than 6 or 7 words per line. But the unfortunate thing is 15 seconds later, you're still reading this slide and you still don't know what I'm talking about. What if I did this and I simply said, blogs are like sharks. If you don't feed them, they go away. Do you need all the words? Or can I just give you the message? Another one here. So here is a basic one that says, according to the Ministry of Labor, 72% of the part-time workers in Japan are female. Well, you kind of see the map of Tokyo, you see the quote, you see something rising. It's kind of convoluted. Now, we used to say add a picture and that will help. Well, you're still going to read the message, and you got kind of a, she doesn't really look Japanese, so it's not exactly right. But what if I simply did this and I said 72% of the part-time workers in Japan are female? Do you need all the words to get the message? So, continuing ahead, here's another one. Interesting question. When this image popped up, what did you see? Did you see the words or did you look at the picture first? I'm wagering that most of you looked at the picture first. Well, if that's the case, why don't I just give you the picture and put the words in it? because you're looking for the picture anyway. Now it's clarified with the message. And the last one here is an idea I like with PowerPoint. PowerPoint's the most powerful media in the world for visualization and ideas. And I can use it to make even words visual. Make it big or make it small. See, the purpose of PowerPoint, pure and simple, is to help your audience see the message. That's what it's for. It's not to deliver your message. That's your job as an educator. The job of PowerPoint is simply to be a visual representation or backdrop so that as I tell my story, they have a connecting point so they can see it from their perspective. So I'm kind of anxious to see some of your thoughts on what you think here. Anyone have thoughts or ideas? What I would hope is that you're getting from this message. Here we go. So we got a couple of good questions here. One says that corporations think training is done by PowerPoint, and that's probably a generic statement, but I will tell you that a lot of people do PowerPoint, but unfortunately they do it poorly and mostly with bullets. I do have colleagues, I know they're in the industry, that do a good job of engaging people and doing some good things. I just completed my ATD Master Training Certificate about 2 or 3 years ago, and it's on the idea of adults learn, but Gen Z folks become disengaged quickly. So we have to change the way we present the information. We have to engage them immediately. Matter of fact, the standard is about every 3 to 5 minutes. So if I'm not asking a question or checking in, they become disconnected. Says, what's the best practice for proving materials that learners can refer back to? And I'm wondering that proving or providing materials can refer back to when we do a visual presentation. So if you give them something that they do or they have to see, then put it in a handout, put it in a brochure. Students aren't going to remember the information on a PowerPoint slide. They're going to remember the visuals that you showed, the demonstrations, the experimentations, the assignments that you're going to have them do, the engagement with the material. That's what they're going to remember, not your discussion with the PowerPoint. PowerPoint is completely ineffective if it's used as a bullet list. I'm going to give you a clue, folks. If you're doing bullet lists, I can prove to you that only 10% of what you're putting on the screen is recalled by your audience. 10%. And I'm going to demonstrate that here in just a little bit. Continue ahead. Excellent on a lot of good points on, yeah, there's a reason death by PowerPoint. I would tell you also, there's a great guy on YouTube if you want to have fun. His name is Dan McMillan. He's been on there for years. He does a PowerPoint or does a YouTube called Death by PowerPoint or Life After Death. And he talks about PowerPoint and shares a lot of the similar ideas I do, but he does it in a real comical way. So if you want to have kick sometime, Dan McMillan, Life After Death with PowerPoint, and it's on YouTube. So you can go check it out. But it's a really, really hilarious site on this. So moving ahead, we just got a few concepts to go here before we go. Number 3, the third concept is active learners retain more than passive learners. And you all know that. Unfortunately, here in the webinar, I'm doing most of the talking and we're not having verbal communication back and forth. And I'm not having you do much. You're just sitting here watching me. So guess what? Time for that to change. So get ready to get active. So one of the key things that has got me the gig with the motion picture industry, with the painters and allied trades, with the carpenters and the other folks across the country, the apprenticeship industry, is a presentation I made in Palm Springs, California, 10 years ago. And I did a simple demonstration on the way that we present information to students that made a profound impact on the way they think about the way we deliver technical training in this country. And so if you have a sheet of paper there, and unfortunately I can't see you all, but if you've got a sheet of paper there, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, I would like for you to pull that sheet of paper out. And what I want you to do to start us off is to fold that upper corner over so that you end up with like a triangle. I'll show you here. I want you to fold the paper so that it looks like this.
Professor, we have two questions in the chat.
Okay, I see that. Okay, so yeah, Layla says that her organization uses it to show in-depth information and less as a presentation tool. And you know what happened there, Layla? Is there's another Microsoft tool called Publisher that we should use for brochures and pamphlets and things. Unfortunately, most people use PowerPoint and they cram that PowerPoint filled with the information. PowerPoint is a presentation tool. So if you're going to present it, it needs to be basic, simple, and then it can highlight that they can refer to. Gina says, how can we advertise learning opportunities in a way that will entice learners to join? The key, as I'm going to get to, there's 3 more concepts here, is the engagement piece. We all know that learning is far more fun when I'm active, I'm engaged, and you want to make me part of the presentation. So if you label it as a dynamic, engaging experience in which they're involved, they're going to be part of it. But if it's one that's expected where they're going to come and watch you read a PowerPoint at them, they won't have anything to do with it. So we need to let people know what to expect when they come, that it's going to be a highly engaging experience rather than one where they just talk and read from a PowerPoint. That's how we make it more effective. Okay, so if you join me real quick in this little demonstration. So you're going to take your 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, fold that one corner down and make a triangle, and you're going to fold that bottom half up just like that and tuck it on the inside. So now what you have is that triangle. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is, if you've got that far, I want you, I'm going to do a couple of things here. Before we get started, I'm going to do a real quick experiment with you. And we'll just see by honesty, you tell me how it works. I'm going to do an experiment. I want all of you at home right there to put your hands up in front of your face like this. And you're going to get ready to clap. Because I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and you're going to clap your hands. Got it? We're going to go 1, 2, 3. We're going to clap. Are you ready? You got your hands up? Let's go. 1, 2, 3. How many of you clapped on 2? Now, the interesting thing here is, based upon what we know with learning, I would say by far most of you clapped when I did on 2 and not on 3, like I said. And the reason is we do what we see, not what we hear. So that's going to work on this next experiment. So take that triangle that we had, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the steps. And when I get through, you're not going to ask any questions. You're not going to interrupt me. You're just going to do as I say, when I say, step by step, and you ought to get done what I want to have you have done. Are you ready? So step one, hold that, open that triangle up so it looks like a diamond. And I'll show you the first one, and then you're going to go from there. So now I want you to take that right corner, fold it over the left corner, and you're going to crease down that center. You're going to make a triangle. Now you're going to look at that triangle, and you're going to take, you're going to open it up, and you're going to fold the left corner along the center crease. Now do the same thing on the right corner. Fold it along the center crease. Now take the bottom and fold it up. And lastly, fold the bottom up one more time, about a half an inch. So then I want you to look at what you've made. If you followed my directions, then this is what your paper looks like. You have made a sailboat. I don't think most of you have that. Actually, when I've done this around the country, and I have showed this to different audiences, less than 10% of the people in the room can actually do what I just showed them to do. I did this in Palm Springs in front of 400 people. I had one guy get it right. Because most people can't do what they can't see. Most people aren't auditory learners that can do exactly what they hear. And so my point is, it's imperative that we show the students, not just tell the students what they're doing. Okay? So now, let's see if we can get better. I want you to do the same thing. You can take that same sheet of paper, or you can and open it up, or you can take another one. But what I want you to do is make that triangle again. So take your second sheet of paper, fold it like that, and then fold that bottom crease up and tuck it inside. So this is what the second sheet of paper looks like, all right? So here we go. Now let me show you step by step and show you how to make it. You just follow my lead. So you're going to take your left corner and you're going to fold it up so that it touches this right side. And when you do, you want to make sure that it's straight across, even with the bottom down here. You know, make sure it's even with this, parallel. Then you're going to take this side and you're going to fold it over in front of it, and it's going to touch that other side. So now you have two flaps at the top. Now you take the one flap nearest the folded side, and you're going to fold it down over the folded side. Now you're going to turn around, you're going to take that other flap, and you're going to fold it down over that side. So you get flaps on both sides. Now, if you simply take your fingers and open it in the top part of the wide part of the cup, everybody in this presentation will have a paper cup. I did this in Palm Springs the second time, and as I showed everybody, 400 people in a room raised the cup at the same time. 100% performance, because I didn't leave anybody behind, and everybody saw what I was doing. Critical factor. point is, you have to pay attention to what I see, not what I say. So as part of what you just saw, part of the problem is this thing called latency. So some of you may have heard of this. This goes way back to Tolman in 1932, when he described latency as the difference between when we deliver something and when it's applied. He did it with rats in a maze, right? Well, the key is that as we deliver information, if we're not allowing our students to immediately apply what we deliver, they're losing it. I do the demonstration like we just did, but I had a third one where I show them how to make a paper airplane. But what I do in the room is I show everybody step by step, like we do in career and technical education and workforce development. Everybody does it. We know, show them, they do, we evaluate. We base it on Miller's 4-step method of teaching. Unfortunately, everybody thinks Miller's is a linear process. It's not. It's simultaneous. Because if we do it in a linear format, and I make you watch me and not do anything, and I show you, then I give you the paper, and then you do it, and then I evaluate, 30% of you in the room can't do what I just showed you. I do it with the paper airplane. I hand out the paper, and in 2 minutes, 30% of the people in the room can't do the paper airplane they saw me make 2 minutes ago because latency kicked in. But when I do it step by step and I check after every step, everybody gets it. I want to talk a little bit about a concept. I want to talk a little bit about this concept even further. And that's this. I want us to think as leaders in industry, as we're preparing people for work and we're designing training centers and programs around the country, I want to ask you a question. We are wasting time, money, and energy, folks. Most training centers have 2 different learning environments. They've got a pristine lecture hall with tables and chairs and PowerPoints. And then they have the lab where all the equipment is. And on a typical given instructional day, people will do the lecture and then they say, okay, take a break and I'll see you out in the lab and we'll do this. By the time they get to the lab, 30 to 40% of the people in the room have already forgotten what they just saw. My question is, why do we need 2 rooms? Why don't we do it in the same room and reduce the latency effect? I've had people take me up on it. I got a company in Kansas City. I've done 4 train the trainers for them and they love it. And they've actually built a room based on that concept where they have tables and chairs in the center, but all the equipment around the exterior. So when they teach a concept, they have everybody turn to the table or turn to the wall and begin to work on the equipment. They have increased retention and decreased latency significantly because there's no separation of time. The plumbers and pipe fitters in Wichita, Kansas, built a 45,000 square foot facility in an old Babies R Us building. And in the widespread area, they have labs with equipment. And on the pillar above each lab is a big video screen where they show the PowerPoints, they show the visuals and the information, but then they immediately apply it in the lab. Again, they reduce the time to learning and increase retention. I had the group motion picture industry in Las Vegas, an electrician said, Doc, this works great with paper cups. How about real world stuff like electricity? So he taught an electrical trades class, taught a basic class, and he did a pretest. They got a 60%. And then he taught them his way, the typical apprenticeship way, where we teach, they do, and then we evaluate. When he did that, 7 of the 12 got 100% the first time. 5 got 80 or 90%. Not bad, but not perfect. But he redid the class with 14 other students. They got a 60% on their pretest. But when he did it my way, step by step, and check after every step and coach for improvement, 100%. All 14 got 100% the first time on the post test. So I don't care what it is you're teaching. If you will change up the way we deliver the information to include application and evaluation and assessment throughout the learning experience, you're going to greatly improve the results of your learning, and they're going to retain more information. But if you just do a session and test them later, you're not going to get more than 60 or 70%. And it's going to be that way every time. It's engagement, it's hands-on, and it's immediate application of what we're learning. This is what you just saw me do with that paper cup scenario. You model, they do it, you check, you coach, they make the adjustment, and then you do that after every step. And you're going to get 100% performance. Okay, got a couple more steps before we break for a Q&A. So the key is to ask questions for understanding. One of the points that I tell my technical instructors is that they do a great job of teaching the technical demonstration and then observing whether they can do it. But then they forget to ask the questions that do the deep dive on why did I do that? Why did I do this instead of this? And I ask questions. There's a variety of questions, open and closed, that I can ask. And I can ask direct at the students, or I can ask them overhead. But the key is I need to be checking in with them constantly and asking, so why did I do that step? Why did I do this instead? Ask them the questions. It reinforces safety. It reinforces cognitive content and understanding of the steps that we have. Great question I just saw here. So the question is, how do we do this in a virtual environment? So I've actually done this training in a virtual environment. So the webinar today, while I've got 38 of you in the room, I'm not able to see your faces and see you in the room. In a Zoom session, though, I would have total access and I would see everybody. I would see all of you. And so we can do this virtually and have you do this in a virtual environment online. If I do it synchronous, I do a presentation skills class at our university. They have our students take to improve their ability to present information. And I do it completely online in a virtual environment. But here's what I have them do. I teach the concept and I teach a snippet of information, and then I have them post a video. They have to do presentations, like 14 of them in a semester. So every week they post a presentation. And then I assign 2 or 3 students to watch their presentation and give them feedback. So they're doing a presentation, they're getting feedback from them and from me. And here's an interesting thing. Since they're doing it online, no student does the first take. They'll take 10 or 15 takes before they post it. Guess what? That's 10 or 15 practices. They practice more in my class than they do in their entire college career because they do that every week. So increased practice, increased feedback greatly improves their performance, and it's all online. So you can do this in a virtual environment, but it's how you engage, and it's how you do the assessment and the assignments, and providing that immediacy for them to become engaged with your content. That's the answer to your question. Okay. And then we got another one here. Okay. That's another good point. Somebody pointed out that we can do polls, and that's true. We can do polls. A lot of people like to play Kahoot online and allow students to participate and be involved in Kahoot. We get feedback, we can show that, and so on. So that's a great suggestion also. We're about ready for the Q&A and open this up here. The last two concepts I want to talk about is one of my pet peeves is when teachers think that once they've got the student to do it, that they've actually taught them something. That's not correct. Learning is the application of knowledge, not the acquisition of it. And so the key here is not only should they be able to do it, but they need to be able to do it and then evaluate their own work. As Bloom suggested, at the highest level evaluation is ask those three questions. Is it right? If not, what's wrong with it? And how do I fix it? Because quite frankly, folks, in the world of work, if we're preparing a worker for the workplace, if all we're doing is show them how to do it, then they're a mess. Because we got to have somebody go around and pick up after them after all the mistakes they've made because they don't know if it's right or wrong. Instead, we need to prepare people that do the work, and when they make a mistake, which they will because they're human, they can fix their mistake. And so we need to get them to the evaluation level, not just the application level. And the last thing is, I've talked about engagement. You got to be engaged. A key factor that we forget sometimes is that student-to-student engagement. That's got to be part of it. So what I would typically do, like when I did the sailboat, when I was in that room with 400 people in Palm Springs, I had partners that sat next to them, check their work, and then compare it against mine. So they were doing a peer evaluation. So they were having student-to-student connections while I was teaching, and that kept everybody engaged. And of course, me and the student are engaged through conversations, and then we have the student-to-student contact. So those are the concepts. And if you stop and think about it today, here's what I've covered. We connect with the learner. We got to think about the law of effect. Is my training a pleasurable experience? How do I keep visual simple? How do I keep things active? How can I reduce the latency effect by simplifying it and making it happen quickly? And then remember that learning is the application, not the acquisition of knowledge. And that we engage students with the instructor, with the material, and with each other. So at this point, I'm going to stop share. And we'll open it up for questions or comments or thoughts on what I've shared with you today.
Hello, Hello,
Hello?
Professor. Yes,
Yes.
there is a question. I have a question here. What potential challenges might arise from using ChatGPT in training?
Okay. That's a great question. And I'm going to tell you a different philosophy that I have that a lot of my colleagues at the university have. A lot of my colleagues are afraid of being the chat police or being the cheap police, excuse me, because they're afraid that if we teach students to use ChatGPT or AI, that, oh my God, they're going to have artificial intelligence do their work for them. Well, here's the thing. Artificial intelligence is a reality, and it's going to be even more so in the world of work. Actually, companies and corporations are utilizing AI more abundantly now because it is an efficiency tool. What I think our job as educators with using these technologies, instead of worrying about if they're going to do it and how to catch them on cheating, instead we need to teach them the moral and ethical and proper obligation of how to use that tool. Perfect illustration. A few years ago, they invited me to come to Houston, Texas, and I spoke at a conference, and I did a demonstration with a cell phone. And what that happened on this was a lot of corporate trainers and a lot of apprenticeship trainers don't like to have a cell phone in the room. And I tell them that's silly because this is the smartest device in the room. Why wouldn't you want to have it? So what I did was for my presentation, I had a screwdriver and I took my screwdriver and I banged it on the table for 3 solid minutes while I was talking. Just bang, 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 bang for 3 minutes. When I got through, I said, how many of you want me to stop banging the table? And everybody raised their hand. And I said, so should we teach Dr. Johnson not to bring these tools to class because he's going to annoy everybody? Or instead, should we probably teach Dr. Johnson the right way to use a screwdriver? Because when I use a screwdriver, it's in my tool belt. I pull it out, I do whatever I'm going to do, and then I put it back in my tool belt. Well, duh, that's the same thing you do with the phone. Our problem isn't the phone, it's a problem they don't know how to use it properly. They're TikToking, they're texting, they're doing whatever. Part of that is the fact that they're Gen Z and they want to be fully engaged all the time. Well, if you've been yapping for 20 minutes and haven't connected with them, they want to be engaged. But since you're not doing it, they're going to do it themselves. So instead, what you do is you let them use the phone, but you teach them to do it properly. So if I'm in class and I'm saying, okay, how many of you can tell me how many billions of dollars were spent on workers' compensation claims last year because of falls in the workplace? Well, most people are going to look around, but guess what? Google that stuff, and in no time at all, you have correct information and you can have a good conversation. So you look up the information, you put it back in your pocket, and you go back to work. That's the way we use technology. We don't avoid it. That's not solving anything. Instead, we engage them in the process and model the behavior to help them do it professionally and correctly as they do it. That's how we do ChatPG and any AI intelligence. Hope that answered your question.
Yes, so thank you, Dr. Johnson.
You're welcome.
On behalf of our OD&C Workforce Education and Development Program, we hope you have enjoyed today's session. If we did not get your question, please email us or reach out to the presenter directly via email. We would like to hear from you. We would like to have your feedback on today's webinar. For future webinars, please take the survey using the link in the chat box or scanning our QR code. Our next webinar is about the role of coaching and coaching culture in organization development by Dr. Behem Bakshande on June 21st, 2024, from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar. And thank you once again, Professor Johnson, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Just a note to our moderators, just got a text that the QR code's telling them it's already filled out. So you got a slight technical error with your QR code.
Okay, thank you. We're working on it.
Okay.